are amazing. This led her to start her own business, which is Inspiring Radiance, to support women entrepreneurs in taking action for greatness. She's got a diverse background, and it includes working in nonprofits, real estate, direct sales, criminal justice, and she even worked as an all-male maximum security prison. She's managing director of the Twin Cities chapter of eWomen Network, and when she's not in a service role, you might find her walking in nature, writing her next book, or packing for a fun travel adventure. And a fun fact is she recently completed the Portuguese Camino, and it was a short 550-mile walk. So with that, Jen Grant.
Thank you. Hello, and good morning. How many of you have ever had a time, now don't leave me hanging here on this one. How many of you have ever had a time when you are among a lot of people yet you still feel alone? Anyone ever been in a situation like that? I know I have. One that stands out the most to me was during that long, short 550-mile walk last fall that I did. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, but as it pertains to how we can reclaim our power. So I found myself on this day in about halfway through my walk, I'm really feeling alone. It was the loneliest day I had on the walk. And I realized that I was feeling very alone, and I'll tell you more about that. But what I learned that day and what I want to share with you more about is how we can pull our power back and reclaim our power at any time. You might know that that's our theme for the month at Lake Harriet Spiritual Community. It's all about reclaiming your power. So I'm going to take you through a 3-step process on how we can do that. So if you unwind with me and go back to Porto, Portugal, if you're looking at the map of Portugal, it's maybe 2/3 the way up near the coast. Porto is on the coast, and then just underneath Spain. So I was walking from Lisbon, Portugal, all the way up to Santiago, Spain. I'm walking what is known as the Portuguese Camino de Santiago. Maybe you've heard of the France version of the Camino. I chose the Lisbon route because it was unique, different. I knew that I wanted to be more alone than the France route would offer me, which ironically enough was exactly what I wanted, and yet this particular day, it really landed on the difference between alone and lonely, right? We can have times when we are alone and we're not lonely, feeling a sense of loneliness at all. I felt that many, many times during the first half of my route from Lisbon to Porto. As I walked those days over and over and over again, I noticed I was very much alone. I had days and days, hours, where I never saw another pilgrim. I walked by myself many of those days, but I never felt lonely on those days. It wasn't until Porto, halfway through my walk, I started out, I had a rest day, so I was feeling really eager. The sun was out. I knew that it was the first time I would make my way to the ocean. I would be on the boardwalk for most of the day. And I left my place early and eager. I stopped at a cafe, and as I sat at that cafe, I am a pilgrim who tends to stop and have a coffee right away. Most pilgrims will walk a while and then they'll stop I get my break right away. So I'll stop and maybe I walk for a mile and I find a great local cafe. I'm having a cafe and visiting with the locals, and I start seeing pilgrim after pilgrim after pilgrim going by. Now, if you're not familiar with this route, most of the people that walk the Portuguese Camino will start in Porto because it's about half the distance from what I walked. So it's about a 2 to 3 week walk, depending on your pace, depending on break days, things like that. I had been walking already for that distance. I had already walked for 21 days or had been traveling for 21 days. And so as I'm watching all of these people go by, I asked the local, how many people? Like, that's another one, and there's another one. They're like, where did you start? Like, I started in Lisbon, and there were times on my route that I had to, we'll say, educate the locals because they didn't even know about the Portuguese Camino because it's so rare for people to walk it. During those first 20 days, give or take, from Lisbon to Porto, I passed maybe 12 to 15 pilgrims. That's how many I saw total. And as I sat in that little cafe, there were probably 75 pilgrims that passed in the short 45 minutes I was sitting there. It was night and day difference. And I was still eager, excited. I got up and I'm following my arrows. My little yellow arrows became my best friend as I'm walking this path. And as I made my way to the boardwalk, I remember seeing the ocean for the first time and the boardwalk, and it was such a refreshing relief, much like what we're feeling today, right? When the great thaw happens and we start to see the sun, and that's just a different essence, just a different feeling. And so I remember turning that corner and still feeling so delighted and so such in a space of just contentment. Maybe that's the best word, contentment. The sun on your face, you're walking and you've 15 miles ahead of you and you're going at your pace. And then everything changed. As I walked, I started to realize there are people passing me, which happens all the time. I'm not a fast walker on purpose. I'm a very intentional, deliberate, be really mindful of my pace. So if you're a pace person, I tend to be around a 2.7, 2.8 when I'm walking. So it's not a very fast pace. It's a deliberate cadence that I came to love those first couple of weeks. And so I was being passed quite a bit, not unusual, just a lot more with all of the people. And then there were some comments that I received. I had people stopping and turning around and telling me that I take way too many pictures, which I found awkward, confronting, triggering. And I found myself questioning, should I be walking faster? I was also told, you're not a very fast walker. You're not a very fast walker. Maybe you should stop taking photos. What are you doing? Don't you want to get where you're going? And I found myself in those moments and witnessing people, groups of people together and laughing and joyous and jolly, and I intentionally went on my own, on purpose. And I remember reaching out to my husband and feeling frustrated and alone and really lonely on this day. It was my 21st day. It was September 14th last year. The sun is out, I'm walking on the boardwalk, I'm by the ocean, people all around me, and I'm having the loneliest day I've had on the Camino. And I felt very triggered in those moments. I felt very frustrated in those moments. And I kept questioning, I noticed I was questioning, should I be going faster? Should I not take photos? Don't photos, they matter to me, isn't that enough? And we start questioning, have you ever had a time in your life where you're following your own way, you're following your path, and you do that for all of this time, and then these people show up, and now they're like, well, that's not the way it's done. And you're not witnessing it being done that way, and so you catch yourself questioning, should I be doing it a different way? Should I not be doing it a different way? Is something wrong with me stopping to take these, or stopping if I see something that brings me joy, I'll stop and I'll spend a little extra time. Early on in my walk, I had realized I'm not in a rush. The only place I have to be is my destination at the end of the day. So why not take 8 hours instead of 6? Why not take extra time at lunch to really savor the food that I'm eating? Why not stop at a local place instead of a quick go-through place where if I'm in a local place, then I get to meet the people and connect with the locals because that's meaningful to me. Why not do those things? So I was doing those things and fell in love with those things those first couple of weeks. And I found myself that day, my 21st day of walking, questioning everything. And it took me the better part of the day to realize that I needed to reclaim my power. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a feeling that in some area of your life, you probably have some power that you've given away, maybe unconsciously, maybe you don't realize it. And when I even mention it, you probably have a moment of, oh yeah, I can think of a spot where I gave away my power. I'm guessing that we all have something, a place we've given away our power. So I want to help you walk through, how can we take that back? And I realized that on that day, sometimes it's not an easy process, right? Sometimes it's easy, but not simple. We've all heard that. Or it's simple, but not easy. Like we know what we need to do, but do we actually do it? Not always. Not always. So I caught myself on that day. I recognized it. I believe the first thing is all about assessing and awareness. We have to understand it. So we have to assess the situation, and it doesn't always need a whole big sit down and take out all the books and really go into it deep. Sometimes maybe we need that. Depending on where you've given away your power, maybe we really do need to sit down and take out everything and use all the tools that we've collected all of the years. Sometimes we need someone standing up here in front of you just asking the question, where have you given away your power? And you'll think of something immediately. Sometimes we need a loving partner that looks at us and says, honey, I think you've given it away. So assessment can come in all sorts of forms, right? That's the first piece. The C, so we're going through ACT is the acronym I like to use. It's ACT because when we take action, action softens the fear. If we're afraid of something and we take any action towards that, right, that will soften that fear. So the second letter in ACT is C, and C is all about choice. So we understand, okay, we've done some assessment, we've done some awareness around it, now we get choice. We get to choose. We get to choose how we want to show up. We get to choose, do I choose to believe them, do I not? Do I choose to step into a way that's going to be meaningful to me, or do I not? And despite what we like to tell ourselves, it doesn't matter what they say to me. It doesn't matter how they treated me on the trail. How I respond is on me. Just like in everyday life, it doesn't matter. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it doesn't impact us. I'm not saying it doesn't have an effect on you, right? I recognize all of that. But how you respond is always a choice. So when we notice that we've given away our power, the second thing is C, it's choice. Noticing it, what's a new action I'm going to take? And then the third piece in ACT is T, and it's time. Now this comes from an understanding that it's not a quick fix, right? I've worked with people in the past, and one of these gals, she's like, well, Jen, I know what I want to do. Just give me the tools, and I'm going to do it. Like, well, honey, you got to understand that you didn't get in this position overnight, right? It's not going to undo itself overnight. It's with time. And can you be consistent with the new choice that you made over time? So if we put all of these things together, right, it starts with assessment and awareness. I have to understand the position that I'm in. I used to talk a lot about this as it's all about awareness and consistency, awareness and consistency. And you can think of this with any goal or intention you're focusing on. And again, reclaiming your power is like leaning into a goal, right? It could be leaning into an intention. So if we're focused on assessment and time, what's that murky in the middle? It's the choice. It's choosing it again and again and again. And what happens, I don't know if this happens to you, it happens to me all of the time. Growing up, my grandma always said, don't wish for patience. God's not going to give you patience. He's going to give you something in which you can learn patience through, which I love that. And so I'm really mindful on what I wish for now. Do I want to be given that, or am I going to have to learn it, right? I'm going to have to learn it in a different way, right? And that was really apparent on the trail. So coming out of Porto, there I am. I have my pack on, I have my shorts on and my tank, and I have my really ugly but so wonderful hat that is covering everything and allowing me to be out in the sun. And I'm walking along and I have this aching sense of loneliness. And my first instinct, still, because I'm human, because yes, I'm a spiritual being, but I'm still human in this human physical meat suit. My first instinct is I'm hurt. And how dare you say those things to me? Why can't I take the photos that I want to take? And so what do I do first? I call up my biggest supporter. I call my husband. I'm like, can you believe this? Can you believe that they said these things to me? Don't they know that I've been walking for 2.5 weeks already? Don't they know that I understand you have fresh legs and fresh clothes, and you can see the difference when people join the Camino? You can tell that they're a brand new Camino walker when they join, and they can probably tell that you are not brand new. Don't they know that I've done all these things? Don't they know that I've already walked 250 miles? Like, doesn't this matter? No, it doesn't, because it's their journey, right? It's their journey. And in the conversation, inevitably, I teach people these things, right? But a coach is always learning. A coach always gets time to practice, just like Grandma said. Like, if I'm going to coach people on this, well, then I get chances to practice it as well. And so in the talking through, like, if you need to have your conversations, still have those conversations, man, because we want to feel held and loved and all of that. And also, I want us to recognize that when we're feeling that disconnect, that discord in our bodies, Abraham Hicks talks a lot about this, that if we're feeling that disconnect, that discord in our body, it's because they are viewing the situation through a different lens than we are. And our lens is not looking at it through the lens that they're looking at it. So is it possible that I can look at this through another lens? So as I'm walking, now I'm maybe halfway through my walk, and I'm starting to get, have you ever had this happen? You don't have to raise your hands on this one. Have you ever had this happen where you're walking, or maybe not walking, but you're frustrated with a situation, and then you realize you get sick of your own frustration? Like, well, I'm kind of sick of that. I'm kind of sick of the complaining about it or whining. Like, what good is that doing me? It's like that old adage that we've heard, holding the coal, wanting to throw it at someone else because you're angry or they did something or they hurt you, but who's being burned? You are, right? So as I'm holding on to all of this, like, there's a moment of, okay, I'm so over this. I know better. I can do better. Let's take a different view. So let's look at that that assess, the awareness around it. I want you to consider, while you're seated here, is there a place in your life, an area in your life where you've given away your power? Is there an area in your life where you'd like to reclaim your power? And just hold on to that. What would it look like? What would it feel like to reclaim it? What would change for you to reclaim it? So in that day, as I'm walking and I realized I've given away my power to strangers. I've given away my power to these people that have passed me. Clearly, I will never see them again because they are now way up there and I am still walking my 2:7 pace. And I've given away my power to them. I've given them the power of how many photos I'm going to take. And by the way, why does it matter to you? I didn't tell you to take all the photos. But I noticed that day, if you look at that day compared to any other day, I have less photos from that day. I gave away my power that day. So having the assessment, what would it feel like to take it back? What would it feel like to step in and lean in a different way? What would it feel like for you and wherever in your life, business, personal, relationships, finances, spirituality, health, wealth, whatever it looks like for you, where do you need to reclaim your power? And again, the assessment can come in any form. There are so many different assessments, tools, things that you can do, conversations you can have. And also it can be a drop-in. Like, we can know it when we know it, right? A lot of times it works that way too. We just need to be open, okay? Open. What's the thing I need to reclaim my power back on? I'm open, drop in, and it will drop in. Or like I said, maybe you have someone really special in your life who's willing to say, actually, I think this is where you've given it away. And it's really, really special to have someone in your life that's willing to do that for you. Because how challenging it could be for them to bring that to the table. Years ago, my husband and I have a running joke. Years ago, I was really, really involved in yoga. I still love yoga. But ever since everything changed in the last I just haven't gotten back into yoga the way that I used to. But we used to have his kind way of loving me. One of his kind ways of loving me he would ask me, when's the last time you've been to yoga? And kind of a reminder of, you're right, because that was my steadying piece. That was a piece that was just for me, right? A practice that was just mine. Maybe walking is that practice for me now. So the assessment form can come in any way. And on my walk that day, part of it was having a conversation with someone else. Part of it was just the awareness and the energy that I was feeling in my body. That's a big piece of it, because it reminded me of what Abraham Hicks talks about. And I knew that if I'm feeling this disconnected inside, I am not lining up with the vision that my higher self has about this opportunity. And what does that vision look like? And what I realized as I started thinking about that is, I get to decide. I get to decide. Camino translates to the way or the path, depending on what languaging you look up. So it's the way or the path. And what I like to tell people is the Camino gets to be your way. The Camino gets to be your path. When I first started exploring walking the Camino, I came across 3 things I was told to expect on the Camino. Now, I don't know if everyone that walks the Camino gets this or not. I have no idea. But when you set an intention, you set an expectation, you're more likely for that to unfold for you, right? So when I started planning for my trip, I had 3 things I was expecting to get from this. The first one is I'm going to learn something new. The second is that I'm going to be able to finally let go of something no longer serving me, which sounded really exciting. I don't need that anymore. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't need it. And the third one was to remember something I already knew. So the first one, learn something new. Second one, release something that I can finally let go of. And the third was to remember something important that I already knew. Now, along the beginning, I kind of had the expectation going into it that, am I going to be given these lessons on day 2 and then go, well, bye? Like in my brain, they're going to come the more that I walk and the more in solitude or the more I am with people, whatever that looks like, that it's an unfolding 40-day journey. I set it up specifically for 40 days. So I kind of expected it would unfold and tie together at the end. But I realized that day as I'm walking out of Porto that the first lesson had been coming, and maybe I hadn't been listening to it. So the first lesson that I gained on the Camino was walk your path. Walk your path. You teach it, you talk about it, you speak about it, but are you doing it? Are you actually walking your path? Because when I walk my path, it looks different than what someone else does. I noticed a couple of times, so the first couple of weeks, for context, not having many people around meant that I was reliant on my ability to find the arrows. If push came to shove and I needed to, I could find it on my map. So I had options. People are always wondering, what if you didn't see an arrow, Jen? It's all good, I'm here, we made it. So I came to rely on myself to be able to find the arrows or figure out my path, right? To figure out which way was the right way. I noticed that day in Porto that so many people were just like head down, just trudging along, following the person in front, the person in front, the person in front. And it was interesting, once I started to kind of pull myself out and kind of pull back my power, it was interesting how I watched a group of people go up a hill to the left on the coast, go up a hill to the left when the arrow was going toward the right. And I kind of took that in and kind of breathed in it. And I decided that I needed a little bit of water, maybe just to witness, because, I'm still human and I'm just curious. So I pull over, I follow the path, and I pull myself over, and I'm having my water, and I noticed that trek of people that all went up, eventually, one by one, came back down, and they came this way. And as they were coming back down, some of them were grumbling about having followed people. And I thought, that is the lesson. It's walk your way, walk your path. Be so present. For me, it's presence, right? Some people do this path for sport. Some people do this path for connection with another. Maybe it's you and a friend go, and I witnessed that too. And at first, again, it made me lonely that I didn't have someone with me, that I didn't have the path to walk on with someone else. But I also realized that what I had during that time was a lot of presence. The pictures, when I stopped, I would stop and take a photo and take something in that I loved because it was so moving to me physically that I couldn't help it. That presence, walking my way. So as you consider assess, as you consider the first letter A, I want you to consider, maybe the question is, where in your life have you given up your path? Where in your life are you walking someone else's path? And is there a path that you can lean back toward? So let's lean into the C, the choice. So we have the assessment, right? I recognize, okay, I'm a little tired of myself complaining about all of this. I'm going to make a new choice. I'm going to make a new decision. I'm going to remind myself, I loved those first 2 weeks. What did I love about those first 2 weeks? I loved just being in the space. I loved being present. I loved knowing that I could stop. Like, there are places on the trail, depending on where you're at, where it's a wide open space and you just know you're going in that direction. And there are places where it's tight and it's two people side by side and no one else could pass, right? So depending on where you're at in the trail. And there were places that I loved so much where they're wide and open and you can kind of meander and take your time and find your way and stop for a snack or stop for a photo or, pull up your little towel and sit on your towel and look at the overlook because it's beautiful in the forest and the eucalyptus, and it was amazing. And I realized those were the things that I really loved. So what can I do to make a new choice? I can make a new choice to remember, walk my way. What does that look like today? What does that look like on this path? What does that look like in this moment? That looks like if we come to an area where most of the people are walking on, we'll call it the left side, closer to the ocean, but there's a space for more, I would go walk on the other side. We're still going in the same direction. And what happened when I did that is a moment later, if you've heard me speak before, you might have heard me tell you about my fig experience. A moment after I made that decision to recommit, to reclaim my power, to understand that I get to walk my way, that I get to walk my path, a moment after making that choice, I was walking down the opposite side where most people were walking, and I came across a man just up ahead of me. He was struggling to carry something in his arms while shutting his door while opening another door. So I attempted to run, but you don't really run when you have a giant backpack. But I attempted to run up to him and offered to help in very bad Portuguese. His English wasn't great, but that's okay because he lives in Portugal. Offered to help and learned that he was carrying fresh figs. And I'd never had a fresh fig I didn't know what fresh figs looked like. And he offered to give me figs, so he gave me a handful of figs, and they were the most delicious, amazing, juicy things I've ever eaten in my entire life. If you haven't had a fresh fig from Portugal, from a tree in Portugal, make sure you have a fresh fig. Now, we won't go into this, but what I quickly realized after eating that and smelling it is that is the smell that I had been smelling the last 2.5 weeks on my walk. And I had passed thousands of fig trees with no idea that there's edible fruit just waiting for me. He quickly educated me on that as well. Ironically enough, I really didn't see fig trees after that. So I got to enjoy the figs that I had there. But why was I able to do that? Because I made a choice. And I committed to that choice. I committed to honoring what I know works for me. And what I know works for me is a little against the grain. It's not going the way everybody else goes because that's the right way to do it. It's not going that way because it's the fastest route. I wasn't in it for the fastest route. I was in it for the most meaningful experience. I was in it for the most presence, for the most connection with the locals. I was in it for walking into a local cafe and blessing you because you've allowed me to be a pilgrim in your country, in your community, and you're welcoming me into your space. I was in it for those moments. I wasn't in it for the pilgrim who decided that I take too many pictures and I walk too slow and my bag's too heavy and fill in the blank. I wasn't in it for that. So I remembered my choice, right? So I want you to consider, if we're talking about reclaiming your power and walking your path, and you have that idea in your mind of a place that you've given away your power and you're going to reclaim it. Maybe a path of yours that you stopped walking and you want to get back on it. What is a choice you can make today? Doesn't need to be the big one, right? A lot of times people, when I'm working with them, like that gal I told you about earlier, it's this quick fix, right? We want it done right now. Like, well, you didn't get here overnight, so it's not going to undo overnight. It's a reminder again and again. So what is a choice you can do right now? Just one little thing. One little thing that you can do to get you back toward that path, right? For me, in that moment, it was, if they're walking on that side of the road, I'm going to walk on this side because that felt better to me. And in doing so, I was blessed by the man with the figs. I believe that happens, that when we choose to walk our path, when we really lean into the way that we're meant to show up, when we lean into our light, we are blessed and appreciated because of it. So consider that. What is one choice you can take? One choice that will help you lean back into your path, reclaiming your power. And then the third is T, right? It's time. It's all about being consistent over time. Again, it doesn't happen overnight. It's again and again and again. So do you think the next day, so I walked from Porto to Villa do Conde, I'm not sure how you say it. Forgive me for saying it wrong. Do you think that from that walk and all the way up into Santiago, do you think I never encountered the opportunity to walk my path again? Do you think it was just wide open spaces and I just get to do it without being challenged? No, of course not. Because when we make a commitment to something, right, what happens? If you're familiar with Randy Pausch, I love Randy Pausch. If you're not, I'm going to encourage you to check out the last lecture. May he rest in peace. He's no longer with us anymore. The quick of it. Randy Pausch was a professor, realized he had terminal pancreatic cancer. And apparently, I don't know this, but apparently what I learned is that he got an opportunity to give his last lecture. And during his last lecture, he had a lot of great lessons. One of them was, do you want to be an Eeyore or do you want to be a Tigger? You get to choose, right? A lot of us, we alluded to this in the beginning, a lot of us blame my action on how you treated me today. So if you're going to treat me a certain way, well, then I get to blame it on him, right? When really, okay, fine, like don't do that anymore, right? And also, I get to respond. And I love the way that Randy Pausch talked about that. Do you want to be an Eeyore or do you want to be a Tigger? Does it mean I always get it right? No. And if you're not sure, you can ask people that love me the most. They know I don't get it right, but I'm practicing, right? Another one of his lessons that I love is the obstacles aren't there to stop you. The obstacles are there for you to prove how badly you want something. And I feel like that is such a great thing for us to keep in mind when we're ready to reclaim our power. Because have you ever put a stake in the ground and said, this is what I'm going for? This is my intention. This is my goal. I'm all in. And then you get something that's completely opposite. You're like, well, what the heck? Now what do I do? And you question it and you unwind and you unravel. Like, should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? Consider Randy's words. The obstacles aren't there to stop you. The obstacles are there for you to prove how badly you want something. So that next day, when I set out, you better believe, I reminded myself, walk your path, walk your path, walk your path, walk your path. And I had opportunities, just like Grandma taught me. If I want to be reminded that I need to walk my path, God's not going to give that to me. God's not just going to say, okay, here you go, my darling. I'm going to get the opportunities to prove that I'm taking on that lesson. I'm going to get the opportunities to prove over time that the choice I made in C, based on the assessment I did for A, is correct. So it's over time, right? It's deciding what does reclaiming your power look like, and then lean in over time. And when something comes in, next time something comes in and you think it's going to knock you off your feet, maybe laugh at it. Maybe think of Randy. Maybe, celebrate it. I see you, little obstacle. I see you trying to tell me that I'm not going in the right direction. I see you. It's just a chance for us to prove how badly we want something. So I really want you to consider time is elusive, right? Time, I don't have an answer on gestation period. I don't have an answer on how long it's going to take you to get to where you want to go. We know now when a human female gets pregnant, we know that it's going to be about 9 months, right? And then we're going to see a baby, right? That's the gestation period of a pregnant woman, of a baby in the womb, approximately, right? Can you imagine, though, the first time someone gets pregnant, what happens? Where's the baby, Ella? You said you were having a baby. I don't see a baby. Where'd the baby go? And we're angry because Ella said that there's going to be a baby and there's no baby. And then 9 months later, here's the baby, right? Or we can equate it to something much longer than that. Think of bamboo, right? I love this story, and I think it really speaks to time and kind of ties it all together. So it goes like this. A neighbor and a neighbor, right? A neighbor walks out of his house and he sees, let's just call him Carl because that's the first name that came to mind. He sees Carl watering his lawn. And the neighbor, let's just call him Frank. Frank says to Carl, Carl, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm watering my bamboo. And Frank is like, and he walks away, right? I don't understand. No, you're not, actually. But he doesn't say that to him because, he thinks Carl's a little crazy anyway. We're not quite sure about Carl, so he just kind of walks away. A couple months go by, and he walks outside again. Frank walks outside, and sure enough, there's Carl standing there watering what he says is bamboo. But again, there's nothing to show that this is actually bamboo. Right? A couple years go by. Frank and Carl haven't crossed each other's paths. A couple years go by. Frank comes outside, and sure enough, there's Carl watering the same spot, still calling it bamboo. Frank is very confused by this. He doesn't understand. It's been 4 years, Carl. Are you going to stop calling it bamboo yet? There's no bamboo, right? Frank decides he's going to move away. Maybe he can't handle Carl's shenanigans. We should have Frank here to tell him, you get to decide how you respond, Frank. You move, that's fine. So Frank moves away. 8 years later, Frank is driving through the neighborhood. What does he see? Bamboo that's 10 feet tall, right? Bamboo generally has a gestation period underground first for 8 to 12 years. If we judge Carl's bamboo based on the first 7 years, it doesn't work. And then once it's there, it's there. I don't know how long it's going to take for you to get to the intention or the goal or the thing that you're planning on. I don't know what that looks like, but I can promise you that there's a gestation period for everything. You've probably seen this picture. I think it's a great visual, so I'm going to give you this one too. If you look at the picture, I know it went around on Facebook. It's two miners. Have you seen miners with mining picks? Is that what they're called? I have no idea. We'll call them a mining pick. And they're mining picks, and the one guy on the bottom or the top, I don't remember which is which, one guy breaks through to the end, and it's like the pot of gold, and the other guy, they show just moments before the end turning and walking away. And I don't remember the exact saying, but the idea is, don't stop before the miracle happens. Reclaiming our power means that we're going to believe it even when we can't see it, because that's true mastery. I'm going to believe what I'm working toward right now is unfolding, because if I don't believe it, who's going to? If I don't put that energy into it, who's going to? If I don't walk those steps, how am I going to get to the next city? Do I know what the terrain is? No. Do I know the weather that I'm going to run into? Not always. Do I know where I'm going to get food or use a bathroom? Not usually. But do I believe that my feet will get me there? Yeah, and that's enough. That's all I needed each day, day after day after day. So for whatever it is that you're working on, that you want to reclaim your power and take back your path, connect to the new choice and stick with it. And trust it. Trust that it has a gestation period. Trust that when those other things show up, maybe they're obstacles, they're just there to prove how badly you want something. And then you go around it and you say, you know what, thank you for reminding me why this matters. I'm working on putting together a really big event for this group that I'm a part of. And we have 95 days. It's in 95 days. And I'm doing a countdown because that helps me stay centered and focused on the goal. And 95 days, what am I doing today? 94 days tomorrow, what am I doing tomorrow? And leaning into that and leaning into that. And it's really easy. If I talk to some people and like, Jen, that's not going to happen. Thank you for being an obstacle, for reminding me how to prove that it is. Thank you for allowing me to reconnect and reclaim my power and my path because I know that it's going to work. I know that it's going to work. It's that proverbial, how many times do we need to go through a no before we get a yes? Doesn't matter, just keep going. Just keep going. So I want you to consider any time that you realize you've fallen off your path. Maybe you're leaning into a new goal or a new intention, a new opportunity. I want you to consider the ACT framework. Assess, make a new choice, and then give it some time. It's consistency. It's that action again and again and again. And most people know what they need to do. Most people get really thrown off by the time. It's that murky in between. It's the choice. Get connected to that choice and stick with the time, and I promise you it's going to unfold. And you'll have back exactly what you lean into, what you desire. And dare I say, maybe you'll get something even better. Maybe what unfolds is far better than you can even envision. Because when we lean into that higher power, when we lean into a process of trusting and continuing and taking that step and really putting that energy, and then we align and make sure that we're feeling in a place of joy and delight and connection and spirit and love, it can't not unfold because you're aligned with a higher source. You're aligned with a greater good. Thank you so much for being in this space, and may you all reclaim your power today.
Thank you, Jen Grant. So now it's time for our... So as you're digging deep, just remember that we are an independent organization, totally dependent on your donations. There's no one else funding us or helping to keep this beautiful building together. So anything that you can do would be appreciated. And you can also go on our website, lakeharrietspiritualcommunity.org, to become a sustaining member on a regular basis, a sustaining donor on a regular basis. That would really help as well. So the ushers are going to be passing out the baskets and music. After this, we'll circle up.
Nobody owns you, not the ones you love. Not a teacher or a leader or a God above. Nobody owns you, not the one who pays. Or the mother who has given you her yesterdays. You're as free as an October breeze, and when it's time to get up off your knees. Listen to me, please. Nobody owns you. Nobody owns you 'cause they bought your drink, or because they care so much about the thoughts you think. Nobody owns you, not the ones you fight, not the one who holds you close and takes you home tonight. You're as free as the wind in the street, and it's time to stand up on your feet. Darling, you're complete. Nobody owns you. Nobody owns you, though they might insist that you signed a little bargain when you held their wrist. Nobody owns you 'cause they told you so, not the one who held you down so many.
Okay, if you'll join me in the tradition of blessing the green. Oh, and if you'll repeat after me, God's perfect love,
God's perfect love
flowing through me,
flowing through me
blesses and multiplies
blesses and multiplies
all that I give,
all that I give,
all that I receive,
all that I receive,
and all that I am.
all that I am.
Wow. Okay, let's circle up for our closing circle.
Come on up. Oops, sorry. Look at all these beautiful people. I always invite you, when I get to do the closing circle, I always invite you to look around the circle. Take a moment. Maybe you don't catch every eyes, but take a moment and see who we get to stand with. And as you're doing that, I want you to consider all of the individuals in this space. Consider all of the paths. Consider all of the power in here. And then imagine for just a moment the thread that links us all. And if we can encourage and love and share some of that light and brightness with each other and uplift each other on their path. Imagine what that does for this room, for the people we connect with, for the circles, the places that we go beyond here. It really is a beautiful ripple. And when one of us shines, as Marianne Williamson says in her quote, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate, is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I meant to be? Bold, gorgeous, talented, fabulous. Who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest in the glory of God that is within us, and it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. So today I encourage you to reclaim your power. Let your light shine, because we need you. I need you. Your community needs you. Take a nice deep inhale. And a full exhale as we celebrate all the goodness in this room. Woo! Thank you so much for being in this space.